Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Burns. I'm the Story Center Publication Manager with Mid-Continent Public Library. And this evening, we're really excited to talk about an upcoming Kansas City poetry anthology that Woodneath Press is going to be publishing next spring. We have with us this evening 3 co-editors that are going to help us with this project, as well as our Story Center Director, Mark Livingood, who's going to talk a little bit about the State of Stories programming tied to the bicentennial. Before we get started, I will let you know that we do have a survey I would put on the screen here. If you would be willing to fill that out at the end of the program, just let us know how we're doing. Our programs are provided by the Ewing Marianne Kaufman Foundation, and so we just appreciate any feedback you can provide. I will put that back up on the screen at a later date. Also, I will let you know that we're going to be doing a drawing for a free copy of the poetry anthology. So if you're interested in winning a copy of this, email me there at the email on the screen, dburns@mymcpl.org. Again, I'll put that up again a little bit later, but we're going to be doing a drawing for that. So just let me know that you're interested. So in the subject line, put something along the lines of Kansas City Poetry Anthology, something like that, so I can know what that's for. And I'd love to get you entered in that. Finally, we do have some information on a blog post here on our website. So you can go to that site for a little bit more information as we're discussing. I'll post this again at a later point, but this has links about how to submit via Submittable and other questions you might have. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite Mark Livingood to the broadcast, and he can talk a little bit about the State of Stories program. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Dave. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here. The Story Center at Mid-Continent Public Library has teamed up with the University of Missouri Extension Community Arts Program to develop a number of free programs to commemorate the upcoming Missouri Bicentennial, and we're calling that State of Stories. And these programs will really help to celebrate and teach Missouri history and culture over the next year. So our first set of programs will be at the end of August and will carry through 12 months until the end of August of 2021 for the duration of the bicentennial. And we're offering a number of things, including storytelling performances and workshops with Missouri master storytellers, a number of book conversations about books that focus on life in Missouri and parts of Missouri and the contemporary or historical experiences of people in Missouri, and also public lectures about different topics throughout that course of the year. So we're planning to offer at least one program a month for that annual cycle. And one of the important projects that we're really excited about is the Kansas City Poetry Anthology that we're here to talk about tonight with the editors, Glenn North, Jose Faus, and Marianne Kunkel, and it's really exciting to have them involved in this project. And to talk more about it, I'll turn things back over to Dave Burns.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. Well, yeah, we're very excited to get this project going. Today is actually the open date for submissions, July 1st all the way through August 31st. Please feel free to hop on to the link here on the blog, and that shows the submittable link. We're utilizing Submittable for submissions, so send those in. We're asking that poets 14 and up submit their work, so at 14 at the age of submission, and up to submit any poems that you have. We are keeping it to 5 pages of poetry, so whether that's 5 individual poems or a couple of larger poems, that's up to you, but we'd like to make sure that we get those folks submitting those things in. We've not put a theme on this anthology. What we're hoping is that as poems come in, we're able to identify a theme with that and really capture what Kansas City has to say during this time, since it is tied to the bicentennial. Now, that said, we're opening this for poets on both sides of the state line. So it is a Kansas City anthology. So whether you're on the Kansas side or Missouri side, please feel free to submit your work. And also, since one of our tagline for Woodneath Press is local author, local content, So if you are not a local poet within the Kansas City metro area, but you'd like to submit, we're opening this up to anyone who would like to submit poetry about Kansas City. So if you live outside the metro area, you're still welcome to submit work if it's about Kansas City, so we can get a good representation of poetry in our time period. One thing I did want to make mention as well is that we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this event with the co-editors. So I know we've had a few people send in some comments. Please continue to do so. Just chat those in via Facebook, and we'll address those at the end of the event. So thank you so very much for that. What we're going to do now is I'm going to invite the co-editors to kind of come in one at a time and talk a little bit about who they are and why they're excited about this project. And then after that, we'll have a discussion about just kind of the state of Kansas City. So first up, Jose, I'm going to bring you into the broadcast. All right, thank you so much for being here, Jose.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Jose Faus. I'm a writer, performer, visual artist here in Kansas City. I also received my degrees in writing and painting from University of Missouri, Kansas City. So I'm an immigrant, so I've lived here a long time and have fallen in love with the city, in spite of many things. So I think that is the real why that I'm really interested in this anthology. I've participated in some other anthologies with a focus on Kansas City or Kansas City writers. And I've always been impressed by the dialogue we are able to have together. And I just know that this is going to be something that's going to be incredibly amazing, capturing this moment in time for Kansas City and for a gift, basically, to ourselves by many of us. So thank you for the invite.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for being a part of this. We're really excited to have you on there. Was there anything else that you'd like to add at this point, Jose?
No, I'll wait for the conversation.
Sounds great. All right, well, thank you again.
Okay.
All right, at this moment, I'm going to bring in Marianne Kunkel. Marianne, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you. In way of an introduction, my name is Marianne Kunkel. I am an associate professor of creative writing and publishing at Missouri Western State University in St. Joseph, just up the road. I live here in Kansas City. I've been in this area for going on 7 years. I am a poet. I've been a poet ever since since I was 4 or 5 and writing poems and songs, but it was in high school English class. One of my high school teachers dropped a Marianne Moore poem on my desk, and seeing her name spelled like my name, it really helped me feel like maybe I could see my name in print, or there was a place for me. So I'm thinking a lot about representation and thinking about one thing I love about Kansas City is how varied all the writers are that I've met here, how different their interests are, their backgrounds, ethnicity, sexual orientations. I find that even the writers that are connected to the university, there's a whole community outside of that university community. I met the poet at UMKC, Hadara Barnadav, on a plane ride about 5 years ago. And through her have met a lot of poets, read with a lot of local poets. So I just really love Kansas City as well. I'm really curious about what those voices are and how they overlap, or how we might find kind of strands of different voices than the ones that I've encountered. So I'm really honored and excited to be part of this, and I thank the library for their support of this project.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you here too. Thank you. Now I'm going to invite Glenn North to come in and speak, introduce himself, and talk a little bit about why he's interested in this project. Hey, Glenn.
I was on mute, so I'm going to start all over. So good evening, everyone. My name is Glenn North, and I am a poet. I'm also the executive director of the Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Heritage Center, and I'm very excited to be one of the co-editors on this project. Jose Faus and I had an opportunity 9 years ago to work with several local poets on what we called a KC Ringa. And a Ringa is just a poem that is kind of like a chain, right? So it comes out of the tradition of the samurai, who would sometimes sit around and sip sake, and one person would say several lines, and then the next person would either pick up on that thought or a line from the previous poet's contribution, and they would keep that going. And out of that tradition, we now have haiku. And we did that 9 years ago, and it was just such a great experience to work with all the different poets here in Kansas City. I think that, like Jose and Marianne both said, Kansas Cityans have so much of a variation in terms of the different voices, the different styles of writing. I hosted an open mic poetry series where we brought in poets from all over the country when I worked at the American Jazz Museum. It was called Jazz Poetry Jams. And one of the observations that all of the poets who came from like Detroit or New York or California made was that they were just always impressed with the variety and how many different voices and how many different styles that they heard at the reading that I hosted. So I have no doubt that this will be the same kind of experience. I'm also excited because this is kind of like a dual-pronged historical project. So we've got the bicentennial of Missouri coming up, which is a big deal. But we're also in this very unique moment in terms of the pandemic and the racial unrest. And I'm so excited that, you know, we will be able to have documentation from a poetic perspective from this particular moment in time. I think that this is going to be an incredible opportunity for us to tell the story. And 50 years from now, this anthology will be something that people can refer back to really understand this moment that we're experiencing.
Thank you so much. And yes, I agree. I think this will be a great opportunity to kind of capture so much of what's happening in Kansas City. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and invite everyone back into the broadcast. Let's just talk a little bit about kind of the state of poetry in Kansas City right now. We've already talked a little bit about this. I'll bring y'all back in. If you'd like to, just discuss where you see the state of poetry and currently where we're at in Kansas City.
Well,
so I'll jump in.
We can all.
Right.
You go, Glenn.
So just kind of piggybacking off the whole notion of the all of the different voices that exist in you know the writing and the poets that are here in Kansas City. You got a very popular spoken word scene that started like back in '97. So right now there are places like Soul Sessions that takes place every Monday in the 18th and Vine area that's hosted by a young man named Simeon Taylor. You've got Arson Spitfire, which is another open mic that takes place every Tuesday in Midtown at Equal Minded Cafe, which is on like 40 something in Troost. And then you've got Kansas City over the past several years has had teams that participated in NPS, the National Poetry Slam. You've got Louder Than a Bomb, which I'm the artistic director of. So it's a citywide youth poetry festival where students from all over the two-state area have an opportunity to compete with their own spoken word poems. And then the team that wins gets a chance to go to a national competition called Brave New Voices. So it's multi-generational. And then Marianne, you talked about like having met Hadara on an airplane. And so Hadara was one of the professors that taught me as I was in UMKC's creative writing program. So there's, you know, for lack of a better way to put it, a robust academic poetry community that exists here in Kansas City. And, you know, you got the Writer's Place. So Kansas City has a very powerful literary scene. So I think that sometimes people sleep on the Midwest. You know, when I travel to other places, sometimes they ask me, do Black people live in Kansas City? You know, they think we're just such a cow town. And I feel like people sometimes don't understand just how progressive and how artistic we are.
I want to give a shout out too. That was a really comprehensive list, Glenn, but I feel like Rockhurst does a lot in terms of, I mean, one great thing about Kansas City is the university presence isn't just one university. I just saw Ada Limon at Rockhurst. I saw her read, and she's huge. They brought in really nice writers. And then KCIAI does the Common Sense reading series. So I think that too is just we've got these kind of swirling academic presences, and then we also have a city that I think going downtown you can see supports the arts or is interested in the arts, and so it just seems like it's fun to see when things overlap, when people like you knowing Hadara and I knowing Hadara and us meeting, and I think it's one of those cities where if you're interested in creative writing, you kind of stumble into a really supportive network of writers.
Yeah, I was going to add too to that. I know Hadara too. I've read with Hadara. So we all know the Hadara connection. Oh my God, this is the Hadara Club. I was going to add too, though. Years ago, I was affiliated with the Writers' Place, and we started a collective that came out of things that were happening at the Writers' Place, which was the Latino Writers Collective, which brought a lot of voices, Latino voices that kind of were there for, but kind of stayed to themselves in some ways. But there's also a group that's come out of that as a La Resistencia, which is a group of self-identifying gay, Latino, lesbian, queer, trans people, and they're very active in that struggle as well. And also Ada Limon, I remember when she actually came here the first time, it was brought in by Jason Stempelman from the Common Sense reading series. And it was an amazing reading. And it was very intimate because it wasn't that big, but it was just a beautiful spot. I still remember that reading fondly. And also, there's a lot of things that kind of rise and happen. So there was at the protest down at the Black Lives Matter protest at the fountain, Sherry Hall, I think, was part of it, or I'm not sure who organized, but I remember seeing Sherry as one of the poets there. There was a poetry night that Sunday night. It was, I think, a Sunday evening, and it was just nothing but poetry, and it was around the fountain. And so there's a lot of these organic things that happen in Kansas City that I'm sure they happen everywhere, but it's a community where we all kind of, in a way, end up knowing each other. So it's beautiful to see that. Yeah, there's a lot of cross-pollination.
I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Marianne.
Just quickly, one would hope this anthology would open up too if people feel outside of that network or just beginning to be interested in writing. I think submitting something to the anthology and being in touch and especially getting the work published and coming to the launch. I think that's exciting to think about broadening that circle through this anthology.
Yeah, we're really excited about.
I don't know if we're a small big town or a big town, but I do love the fact that we are able to. You guys still there? That we are able to kind of be in close orbits, with one another. If that makes any sense. Like all of the three of us coming from like three different backgrounds, all knowing Hadara. There's just kind of this opportunity, although we all kind of do this work in these different silos, a project like this gives us an opportunity to bring everybody together in one space for one common cause. And I think that just helps to strengthen the literary community here.
That's fantastic. Well, we've been getting some wonderful comments coming in, which we can get to in a moment. Before we do, did anyone else have anything they'd like to add about as far as kind of the state of poetry in Kansas City? This has been a wonderful discussion so far.
I would just add one thing is that I wanted to add and always thank Glenn for something. He used to host a thing at the Easy, wasn't it?
Are you talking about Verbal Attack or Jazz Poetry?
Verbal Attack, Jazz. Yeah. No, it was the one you did at. It was on Main Street, the old Cajun place that was there.
Oh, Danny's Big Easy.
Danny's Biggie.
Yeah. So that was actually Carmelo Brooks. I was there a lot, but that wasn't.
I think I met you there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we met, though. Absolutely.
Yeah. But what I love about that is it reminded me of something I read. I think it was in a Kerouac anthology of writings, where he talks about meeting a guy in Tom's Cafe in Kansas City. And I remember Tom's Cafe. I remember thinking, oh, he just meets a poet in a place. And I think that's the beauty of it, is I could meet Glenn at a bar on Main Street with nice food too.
Yeah, it's been great knowing you, Jose. Marianne, I know we're just getting to know each other, but I've read some of your work and I get such a great vibe from you. And for those of you listening, Marianne just had a baby, so let's big up her and congratulate her and her family. So and a shout out to baby Zora. So yeah, I love the fact that we have this opportunity to bring all these different voices together. I'm excited to see what will happen.
I think I met you both first through your work when the Story Center did the April Poetry Month, and we each dropped a poem on the page.
Right.
And that was cool because I was reading, Glenn, your poem first, and I was like, "What? Who is this person writing these great rhymes and this musical poem?" And then Jose, I think you came after me, and yours was this really sprawling, like spacious poem. And so to put faces to the poems was really neat. To meet your poetry first, I feel like that's the way I want to meet a lot of poets is through the first.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to remind everybody that if they would, here's the link to the survey at the very bottom. If you would just fill that out, and we'd love to hear from you and let you know if you enjoyed this program and if you have any suggestions for other programs and what have you in the future. We'd love that. Also, there's a chance to win a free copy of the anthology. So if you would just email me, again, that's dburns@mymcpl.org afterwards, and just state that you're interested in entering for the free anthology. We'll get you a copy of that once it is published. And then finally, again, to kind of run down some of the submission criteria, there is this blog site that talks specifically about the anthology and all the submission pieces in there. And I will leave that up as we move towards the comments and questions that folks have had here.
David, I have a question for you and Mark. I know that we had talked about reaching out to visual artists for someone to do the cover.
Yes.
And I know we talked a little bit about that, but have you moved any further down the road in terms of figuring out how that might work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. So what we're planning on doing is identifying a theme from the poems that we're getting. So after we get all the submissions in, end of August, first part of September, going through those and identifying a theme. And then at that point, contacting, I've got a couple of local arts places, and I'm certainly open to any suggestions you might have. But seeing if we can find a way to get a local artist to do the cover, I think that would be a really cool way to tie that in and connect with that theme that we've identified. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say we talked about the literary community in Kansas City, but just the arts in general. I mean, the theater community, the visual arts community, obviously the music scene in Kansas City is ridiculous. I mean, a lot of the shows that we happen in on for free, if we were living in LA or New York, there'd be like a $25, $30 cover, so Kansas City just really is an incredible place to be an artist.
I agree. It's feels like kind of a hidden gem, like you mentioned earlier, whether big small town or a small big town. So I had one individual mention, as you were talking about different poetry connections in Kansas City, Poetic Underground in Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Another place. Yeah.
And Prospero's Books, which has hosted a lot of events, which we came out of Spartan Press to get our first little chapbook stuff. So
Shout out to Spartan Press. Shout out to Poetic Underground. I'm so sorry. There's also a nonprofit organization, Poetry for Personal Power, that was started by Karina West, but is now being kind of led by Sherry Purpose Hall, who you mentioned earlier, Jose. And they use poetry as a vehicle to raise awareness about mental health and self-empowerment, and just an incredible organization that kind of, really uses poetry in a meaningful way to make a positive impact on the community. And also, just a shout out to Wise Blood Bookstore and Our Daily Nada. We've got two, really incredible local bookstores that are waging, the like kind of, what's the word? The kind of holding on in spite of, the Amazons and the Barnes and Nobles of the world. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing.
Unfortunately, Daily Nada took the hit.
No, did they?
So now it's Wise Blood. You can still go to Wise Blood though. So yeah.
Yeah. Really? I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know.
I love that
Beautiful
spot.
effort. It was.
There is a thing called bookshop.org that's happening right now that is a way for people to connect with their local bookstores and kind of support them. So if you're not aware of that, you might check that out. Excuse me. One individual did say, love the idea of broadening the circle of support and community among writers through this anthology. I know we talked a little, that was mentioned, and so people are just loving the fact that we're broadening that out.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Let's see, have some questions about publishing self-published work already. And as we've mentioned in the blog post, we are only accepting work that has been previously unpublished. So if you have questions about what that might mean for your specific book, please feel free to reach out to me directly and we can kind of talk about that. But we are looking for previously unpublished work in this.
And that counts as online too, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, anywhere if it's been previously published, we're wanting new work for this anthology. Yeah. So Glenn, there's a question for you. What was the name of the organization's name? Again, from Glenn North, about poetry bringing issues for mental health. Could you?
Oh, Poetry for Personal Power.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think right as I asked that, someone in the chat already responded for you. So people are engaging, which is wonderful. Let's see. I'm going to see if there's any other questions. If anyone has any other questions, or if there's any I missed, I apologize, but feel free to re-chat those in. Again, I've got the link here for the blog that kind of talks about the full submission requirements and how to get tied in on Submittable. While I look through these questions and make sure I didn't miss any questions or comments, are there any other things that anyone here on the panel would like to mention? I'm going to take just a moment to expand.
I do want to add to something. I know that there's a good possibility this may not happen, given the conditions we're in right now. But next year, Associated AWP will be in Kansas City. And I think this is really a good way for this community, I think, to be there when it comes, because I think that's one of the, when everybody mentioned earlier about the strong arts scene here, I think that's going to be a great feather for us to be able to be the strong literary community that is very diverse, very inclusive, and that I think is willing to just be on the national stage, to put it in a better way.
So Jose, I knew that was happening, and I talked to Angela Elam a little bit about that, who does New Letters on the Air. Shout out to New Letters on the Air from UMKC. They do incredible work in terms of
and they need our help right now.
Yes, they absolutely do, because with the budget cuts that are taking place at UMKC, New Letters on the Air is facing the possibility of being cut. So we definitely want to support them. And then New Letters Literary Journal, that is also coming out of Kansas City, which has gotten incredible national attention over the years. It's a highly respected literary journal. But who, Jose, that you talked to, is kind of helping organize the efforts around what's going to happen when AWP gets here? Marianne or Jose, have you guys talked to anybody who's like helping whoever brings AWP to town helping with the organization and what's going to happen when they get here?
Well, I'm in contact with some people that are going to be involved coming in from out of town. But it's a group effort led within the organization itself. The board members are deciding. But I think for us as a community is, I think, being able to be ready to provide spaces for readings. I mean, one of the things that's, to me, the most beautiful thing about AWP is to hear all these different voices and to kind of be ready to open up so many different places that people can read. I think on ourselves, that's one of the big things we can begin to do, to kind of build that kind of network that in case it does come up to pass, I mean, we are ready. We just, venues are lined up, people, connections. It would have been nice if the city had maintained that Office of Cultural Affairs, because that could have been a way to maintain. Very short-sighted on the city's part, but you know, it's what it is. Sometimes you sacrifice the arts at the beginning. But I think a lot of this will be a lot on us to kind of be the welcoming guest, the hosts. But there will be a lot of people engaged. I'm sure the universities and other people too.
Yeah, and we've had several conversations as a Story Center staff about how we can provide a venue for such off-site programs at AWP, and poetry readings would be an ideal an example, or other kinds of readings that we could have at the Story Center at Woodneath Library Center, especially anticipating the completion of the historic home and its adaptive reuse. So we've talked about that. We would love to be able to do something like that if AWP comes to pass in Kansas City, and kind of a lead up to the official launch of the anthology a month later in April.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know who all out there is listening. So just not to make assumptions, if any of you don't know what AWP is, it's like the largest kind of literary annual conference that takes place in the country. And they annually have it at a different different city each year. And so for Kansas City to be up next, it's a really big thing. And just like if you just Google AWP, you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, I've been to AWP twice, and you literally have an opportunity to touch and be close to some of your literary heroes. You know, it would be, very possible to just walk by Terrence Hayes and see him with a cup of coffee and say, "Hey, Terrence, what's going on?" So for those of you who may not know, this is something that is really a big deal in terms of the literary community. For them to have that event here in Kansas City is no small thing.
No, it is. And
12,000 attendees. It's like its own town that drops into a bigger town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I dropped the link for AWP actually in the chat. So if anyone needs that, they can pull it right out of there and reference that. So wonderful. Well, we've had a number of questions. Folks have just kind of been asking some things about the submission process and submittable. So I've been able to key in on a number of those. But based on the questions and the engagement, I think a lot of people are really excited about this project, as I know we all are. So I am going to, let's see, one last time, put it up here. If you are interested in getting a free copy of the anthology, just ask that you would email me directly, dburns@mymcpl.org. Just let me know that you're interested in a free copy of that, and we'll do a drawing as publication date rolls around next spring. And again, we've got the survey link at the very bottom. Before we go, does anyone have any last remarks they'd like to share about this project or about poetry in Kansas City?
I was looking at one question here, which was, can we submit poems about anything and you'll decide what strikes a chord and go from there? I don't think it's so much a chord as the quality, and if it's about Kansas City, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, quality, surprise, risk, those are some important terms for me. So.
Yeah. And for anybody out there who knows me, the submissions are going to be anonymous. So you can't Don't email me or private message me about how to get in. Just write a great poem, and that's how it'll work.
Amen.
And so the submission process opened today, or the submission period opened today, and it's lasts until the end of August. So 2 months. Great.
And so I'm just making a quick note. So someone asked about when people will be notified if they're chosen for submission, and so I think that's going to be just kind of that late fall time period. We're hoping to have everything in place by Jan 1. So kind of in that time period. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. This has been wonderful. Thank you for being a part of this project, Jose, Glenn, Marianne. It's amazing that we're able to get you to be a part of this and help us out with this. Not only the fact that you're so well respected and well known in the poetry community, but the fact that you're tied in and have helped us with other projects and things with the Story Center. We're just really, really glad that you're here and being a part of this. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. All right. Well, again, my name is Dave Burns. We've been talking about the upcoming Kansas City Poetry Anthology, and I just want to thank our guests and Mark Livingood for being here as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and please start submitting some poetry. We'd love to read it.
Go write some poems.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Best words, best order.
I love that. That's great.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.